Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason. Here are your hosts, Richard Saunders and Stefan Sojka0.
Richard, I'm feeling cleansed as at the moment.
Stefan, you're looking somehow cleaner than before. What happened?
I've been detoxed.
You've been detoxed?
I've been thoroughly detoxed. Yes, I've got a new system that I've tried, and it's fantastic.
I've heard about that. In fact, we have a bit of news about that later in the show. This new system of detox you've come up with.
It's amazing. So I'm feeling very refreshed and great to be here on this lucky 13th show.
It's the 13th show, and it goes out on a Friday. Ooh.
Whoa, scary. It happens to be Friday the 16th, but who cares? We can make some inference out of that.
I mean, the other side make inferences out of anything, so we can too.
Absolutely.
A great show we have for you today. Hello, Skeptic Zone listeners. We have part one of a series of interviews with Barry Williams.
The legend himself.
The big legend of Australian skeptics.
The original skeptic of Australia, basically.
And he looks just like Santa Claus.
No, he does too.
Yes.
And he hires himself out too on occasion.
He does. No, he's been involved with Australian Skeptics for almost 30 years. He's just retired.
Oh.
So I ran around to his place and I got a lot of his memories about how the Skeptics started. And today he's going to tell us about how the Skeptics started, adventures with water diviners, and meeting Uri Geller.
He'd have some real yarns to tell, because especially back then in the day when he started, all that stuff about UFOs and chariots of the gods and all that stuff that was around then, and everyone don't believe anything.
They still do.
I know they do.
They still believe anything.
Yeah, but thankfully Barry's been holding the fort the whole time.
No, it's very interesting stuff. And then we've got a new segment with our good friend Eran Segev0. That's called A Grain of Salt.
Grain of salt?
Grain of salt.
Which hopefully you don't take with a grain of salt.
Yeah, don't take it with a grain of salt.
Full of substance.
It's called a grain of salt. Now, I'm glad we mentioned detox. Dr. Rachie looks at a serious look at detox today.
Oh, yes. It's amazing how many impurities are floating around in your body, isn't it? Yes, detox. It's a wonderful thing, and it's funny how almost every new age, every sort of alternative medicine thing says that something inside you needs cleansing.
It's wrong, isn't it?
It's like your liver needs cleansing.
Your brain needs cleansing. Something like that.
Right. Oh, that'll be great, Dr. Rachie. Good stuff.
Yeah, that's a good Dr. Rachie. Followed by, of course, your new information about detox. Stay tuned for that.
Oh, the infomercial.
The infomercial.
Oh, stay tuned for that one.
It's about a new product which I'm going out to try. Right after the show.
It'll work.
And then we're going to have the roundup with Michael Wolloghan0, his news and views, and a great think tank this week with our special guest, Dave the Happy Singer.
Oh, Dave the Happy Singer.
Dave the Happy Singer.
Was that at Petersham?
That was at Petersham.
Oh,
you missed out.
I know. I was actually driving past it, and I got my dates mixed up, and I forgot to drop in.
Never mind.
Next time.
We tried a new club. So it was quite good.
Was it good?
Yeah, it was fine.
Plenty of Keno and bingo going.
Yes.
Gotta love the Aussie clubs.
Gotta love the Aussie clubs.
Excellent. So that's another action-packed show.
Look, why don't you and I just nip around the back, have a quick detox.
Yeah. That's a quick cleansing.
Listen to the show, and we'll come back at the end.
We will, and it's going to be great. Well, thanks for listening, and we'll see you soon.
For almost 30 years, the face of Australian skeptics has been Barry Williams, former president, chief executive officer, editor of the magazine The Skeptic, and life member of the organisation. Barry has a wealth of experience and knowledge. In this, the first part of a series of interviews, I start by asking Barry how he began his adventures with Australian skeptics.
Yeah, I saw Dick Smith on television. There was a big famous UFO case in New Zealand where an aeroplane flying between North and South Island had spotted these lights and happened to have a Channel 10 Australia television crew aboard. And he took video of it, or film, I suppose, in those days. And there was a big story. It was all over the media here. This was about 1979. And I saw Dick on television, and I knew him by reputation, that's all. Saying that what we needed was some sort of an organisation that the media could go to when a story came up like this without... they tried getting on to physics professors at the university who are obviously too busy to talk to the media and that sort of stuff. He said, we need some sort of organisation who can gather this information, get some intelligent comment on it to appear. And I thought, what a brilliant bloody idea. I thought, yeah, I want to be in that. So I wrote him a letter. Before that, I'd never written a letter to somebody I saw on television, somebody I didn't know. And I haven't done it too many times since either. But I wrote to Dick and said, I love that idea, and if you do start one, I want to be a part of it. And a couple of months later, I got a letter back from Dick saying, well, it's just started. Are you still interested? And I wrote him back and said, sure. And then he put me in touch with Mark Plummer in Melbourne, who was the moving force behind it in the very early days. And Mark suggested a few things I might do, try to find out, and he sent me the list of the people in New South Wales who were interested, and I got those together, and Victoria started their own branch, and they asked us did we want to, and they asked me would I like to do it because I was their most regular contributor or correspondent. And so I said, yeah. So I got a group together from people in Sydney that were interested in subscribing to The Skeptic when it came out, which it shortly did thereafter. And it went on from there. That was in 1980, but I've asked everybody who was involved in the foundation of Skeptics. Nobody knows the exact...
Yeah, lost in the mist of
yes,
time.
It is.
And
wow! Look, hundreds of things like this get off the ground every day, probably, and most of them founder in the first 3 months, The fact that we've been going for nearly 30 years is rather remarkable.
That's true. In the very first issue of The Skeptic magazine, which was a four-page broadsheet sort of... That was 1981, which makes our journal one of the oldest skeptical journals.
I think the only one that beats us is The Skeptical Inquirer, which started from memory 1976, so I don't think there are any others between them and us.
No, you're probably right. And the very first issue, of course, has a big picture of James Randi.
Yeah.
Now, James Randi has been instrumental and was instrumental in I guess, inspiring Dick Smith to kick this organisation off.
It started off, and this is pre-Skeptics, Dick obviously had a lot of inquiries about water divining. And being the man he is, he thought he might like to test some of these people. He was a subscriber to the Skeptical Inquirer, as was Philip Adams, and they knew each other. And they jointly brought out James Randi to do the testing, because they knew James had done some testing overseas. And also on board was the late Richard Carlton, the distinguished journalist, and a couple of other people. And they brought Randi out, and Dick's on his property out at North Ryde, I recall. They actually laid pipes under the ground with a manifold at one end so they could change which one the water was going through. And it must have cost a fortune to do this test.
It did, yeah, I'm sure it did.
And of course, a number of people turned up. I don't recall the exact numbers, but there were a dozen or so at least. All of whom were sure they could divine water, and of course, they, once they did it under control conditions, none of them did any better than chance. And, it's, as you know, something we've been doing ever since. And you can't convince people. I mean, you can show them that they're not actually doing what they claim they can do, but they still want to believe it. So,
but the good thing was about those tests, they would have been forgotten in history or written up in some report, but Dick Smith had the good sense to arrange for the whole thing to be filmed. That film, as you know, is still being used widely today.
Yeah. I mean, it went to air on one of the commercial television channels. I can't remember where it was.
7, I think.
7, I think you're right. And it got a bit of a furor. It caused a bit of a furor at the time because there are lots of people. Nearly everybody lives in the bush believes that water diviners can find water.
Yeah.
And they probably can, but I don't think the bent twigs or bits of wire or pendulums or, granny's knickers have anything whatsoever to do with it. Then, well, as you know yourself, when we decided we should do something about this, we did several tests with the Skeptics. We did another one in conjunction with Channel 9 several years ago, in which we brought diviners from all over the country to try their hand, and again, none of them had any more success than chance would dictate. And then you've done several yourself at the Mitta Muster and things like that. We've done a lot of water divining tests. And we've never found anyone who can find water if they don't know, if they already know it's there, which that should say something. But when you made the decision that you should put all this together on that videotape, the Great Skeptic Water Divining DVD, that's now gone everywhere. I mean, we get inquiries about that from schools mainly and other people around the country. And every now and again I get a letter from somebody that not quite the old traditional thumbnail dipped in tar, but you know they're bushies. Not knocking bushies, but some of these people obviously, and they want to test. They want to be tested, and I send them the DVD, and they come back through medium of our challenge coordinator Ian Brycey. Brycey gets on to them, and they have long conversations. I've never seen any of them actually come to a test since then.
No, it's been a long time since we've actually tested anybody like that. I think the DVD serves two purposes. One, it educates people, and two, it stops a lot of people in their tracks coming to be tested because they can see that, wow.
Yeah, that's right. It's one of the things I've done throughout all my time with the Skeptics, and we've had this challenge up that if anybody can demonstrate any paranormal claim, we'll pay them various sums, and currently $100,000. The first step is when they contact me, I say to them, before we can test you, we need to know exactly what it is you claim you can do. You've got to be explicit. You can't say, I'm psychic, give me the money. Obviously that's not going to work. So you say, write it down. Tell us, if you think you can predict the future with accuracy, well, we want you to write down, predictions, and you've got to send them before the future happens. Or if you claim you can levitate, we want you to say you can stand in the middle of your lounge room and float up to the ceiling, whatever you can claim you can do. And when I ask people to do that, almost invariably, that's the last I hear of them.
Yeah, they can't do it.
Because they can't. They have this little thought in their mind. They might have guessed the winner of the last Melbourne Cup, or they might have thought, Jesus, old Auntie Mabel's not looking too good, I wonder how long she'll last. And then when something happens, they got the winner all right, or Auntie Mabel falls off the twig a week later, they think, I must be psychic. Well, that's the sort of thing we all do, and none of us are psychic. We all by chance make some lucky guesses. And it'd be unusual if we didn't. If there were never any coincidence in life, you'd think somebody was actually pulling the strings. The fact that coincidences happen is indication to me that nobody is pulling the strings. But we see coincidences. Our little pattern-making mind says there's a connection there. And the connection's usually only because you think there is. There's no connection between them at all, no external connection.
Yeah. Now, you're one of the few people I've met who's actually met Uri Geller.
Yeah.
And briefly, I think it was.
Very briefly, I had a job with the American consulate in Sydney, and in their commercial section, used to run their trade exhibitions for a while, and one of my friends in the visa section rang me and said, guess who's up here looking for a visa? And I said, well, I don't know. You better tell me, I've got a clue. He said, Uri Geller, and he said, you want to say hello to him? And I said, all right. So I whizzed up to their section. There he was, standing there waiting for his visa for the US to be cleared. He was here on a rather unsuccessful visit. He was sort of reprising his great successes here in the 1970s.
Oh, yes.
And he came back, and there's these new agey groups that set up meetings all over Australia. And I think he did 2 or 3 of them, and they were attracting audiences in the single digits rather than filling the town hall like he originally had done. Yeah. And of course, as is usually the case with people like Uri, suddenly a relative back in the UK, back home gets ill and he has to leave. Eric Von Daniken had the same excuse a little later. And so anyway, I bowled upstairs, and there he was. I recognised him, obviously.
It's a cuckoo, and you're talking about Uri Geller. It's appropriate, isn't it?
Yes, he normally so. That's a gift from the people in Germany that my grandson stayed with when he went on a 5-week exchange visit over there a couple of years ago. Anyway, yes. And I introduced myself and said, I'm Barry Williams, I'm Australian Skeptics. And he had a bloke with him who I didn't catch the name at the time, but it turns out he's another alleged psychic called Riley G.
A name familiar to us all?
Riley started sending me emails after this, and I said, are you the psychic equivalent of Kellogg's Special K, perhaps? He was a nitwit. But anyway, Uri lamped onto me, and I was astonished by it, because he knew I was a skeptic. I know James Randi, I know the Skeptics groups. We don't think much of him. We reckon he's a magician trying to pull the wool over people's eyes. That's obvious. He was determined to convince me that he was real.
Really?
And he's one of these people who can't just stand there and talk to you. He wants to get into your face, wants to get closer and closer, so you keep backing up against the wall. Yeah. And the intensity of the man astonished me. I didn't believe it. It made me think that if he knew clearly that he was bunging it on, he wouldn't have been so intense about convincing me.
Yeah, that's interesting. I tend to agree that if you've got the natural ability, you wouldn't constantly be trying to convince people it's true. But if you're faking it, that occurs to me that's what you would do.
Yeah. And anyway, I had a chat with him for about maybe 20 minutes, and he had not convinced me, and that was the end of my meeting with Uri Geller, actually. But I did hear from Riley G several times. He told me he was one of these early ones predicting crimes, predicting murderers and things like that, which has become much more popular since then on the television.
Oh, yeah.
To the great detriment, I think, of people's common sense. But he kept sending me these things. I think he claimed he'd worked as a police officer in New York City or something for a number of years. I just kept taking the piss out of him because I thought he was an idiot.
Hi, Phil Plait from badastronomy.com and the James Randi Educational Foundation here. If you want to get an American take on things like moon hoaxers, astrology, chiropractors, creationists, anti-vaxxers, global warming denialists, homeopaths, psychics, UFO believers, and doomcriers of any flavor, then go to badastronomy.com, randy.org, or skepticblog.org, and there you'll be able to read me ranting, railing, frothing, and foaming about hoaxes, nonsense, pseudoscience, anti-science, and anyone who spins, folds, or mutilates reality.
Let's all take this with a grain of salt. Here's Eran Segev.
What I'd like to talk to you about today is what happens when you either find out that you're a skeptic or become a skeptic, and you want to become more active, what we often call a capital S skeptic. Before I start talking about what you actually do, I want to first share with you my own story about how I became a skeptic. And the reason is that I think many of you will probably share a similar experience, and I think that's important because the things I'm going to describe are lessons I've learned from my own experience in becoming an active skeptic. So I'd probably like to point out that even as a child, I was skeptical. I grew up in an environment that tended to be promoting religion, and I was not religious. I was very interested in things like the works of Erich von Däniken. I initially believed them. That was when I was 9. Then I stopped believing in them. I think I was about 10 at the time, simply because I realized by myself, without any assistance, that things didn't just make sense. They just didn't stack up. And I have built a skeptical approach to life through that, and also through my immense interest in science, and in particular in physics and astronomy. Yet in 2002, which is the year I actually discovered that there is such a thing as a skeptic, I had been seeing a chiropractor regularly for back problems, and I had used homeopathic remedies for an allergy that I developed against my contact lenses. So it was definitely a mixed bag. I was not particularly well informed, and it wasn't like skepticism was something that permeated my life. And then in 2002, I met a mother at my kid's school that very proudly proclaimed to me that she will not let her children be poisoned by vaccines. So after I told her quite elaborately that I'm not particularly appreciative of the fact that her children are spared the jab at the expense of the herd immunity provided by my children, I went online to look for a bit more information. And I found quite a lot of information. One of the things I found was the Australian Skeptics website, which had a very good article on vaccinations on it. And I started reading the website, and over the next 3 days, I spent a lot of time online, probably read every single page and article on the website, which is quite elaborate, quite expansive, and And it was just a revelation for me. It was quite an amazing process that I went through in just 3 short days, because you should probably realize that I'd spent a significant proportion of my life being an argumentative, know-it-all weirdo. And then all of a sudden I discovered that argumentative, know-it-all weirdos had an organization. That was a fantastic discovery for me. I was not alone. So that was it took me 3 days to become a skeptic, to know that there was a name to my approach, to my view on life. There's a reason why I'm telling you this story. As I said, I was a skeptic throughout my life, but I didn't know about it, and until recently that was very common. It still is quite common. I meet people every week who are skeptical in their approach, who are sometimes passionate about their skepticism, but don't even know that there is such a thing as organized skepticism. They do not know that there is a word to describe their approach. And when they hear I'm from Australian Skeptics and I describe to them what it is, they're surprised and say, hey, well, that makes a lot of sense. How do I know more? How do I find out more? And they're skeptics, but they're not capital S skeptics, and they don't know that there's a name to what they are. Obviously, things have changed a lot since 2002, mostly because of the internet, because we now have podcasts and social networks, and they've made a huge difference, because a lot of people now find out about skepticism through that, and that has made a big difference in penetration of skeptical thought into mainstream consciousness. But there's still a long way to go, and what I'd like to do now is discuss a few things that you can do to become a more active skeptic, and a few things that I've learned along the way about the best approach to become a more active skeptic. The first thing and most important thing, in my opinion, is to be open, proud, and vocal about your skepticism. Now, that doesn't mean that any time somebody says something, you start laughing, or you become, you push your ideas and thoughts and comments regardless of the situation. What it does mean is that when the opportunity arises, you do not shy away from stating your position. You do not hide the fact you're a skeptic. You say, no, this doesn't make sense. This does, provide me with more information. You act like a skeptic. You try to promote skepticism and critical thinking over muddled, credulous, and fuzzy thinking. And in doing so, there are a few tips I'd like to promote as probably the most important things in terms of the approach. And those are to be polite, informed, and humble. And I'd like to discuss those in some detail. First of all, regarding being polite, it's always a good thing. I'm sure your mother told you that. But when you become a skeptic for the first time, there's usually an urge to tell the world about it. And the problem is with that is that the odds are stacked against you managing to convince somebody who believes in psychics that John Edward does not really communicate with the dead, even if you do not tell that person that he's a moron. Okay? That the person is probably a moron anyway. That is besides the point. The thing is that you should be polite because you want to achieve something. You want to somehow engage in discussion, and you will not achieve that by not being polite. My suggestion, based on my experience of the last 7 years, is to usually wait until challenged. Do not just push your ideas and your agenda, but if challenged, then definitely that's a good time to start discussions. And in particular, if somebody is peddling their beliefs, if somebody is trying to either sell a book or to convince other people, that's a good time when you can be openly aggressive, I would say, about your skepticism and openly challenge them. And then if they're pushing their agenda, they're fair game as far as I'm concerned. The next thing is to be informed. Read, listen, ask people, watch, and make sure that when you're faced with a situation that you feel needs raising a flag, you know what cold reading is, for example, in enough detail to challenge, to dent the confidence of that psychic believer that psychics are really doing what they're saying they're doing. You don't have to be an expert on anything, but you have to know enough to make a difference. The best things you can do to learn more are, for example, go to skeptical websites, look at their book lists, and start reading. There's lots and lots of books you can learn from, and there are many websites will have book lists like skeptics.com.au. Watch Penn and Teller's Bullshit series. That's a lot of joy concentrated into 30-minute episodes, and it's quite a fantastic resource. Subscribe to magazines. Our local, the Skeptic magazine, Skeptical Inquirer, Michael Shermer's Skeptic, and others. Join online discussion groups. There are also some fantastic podcasts, as you all know. Rachel mentioned the Skeptic Zone and the Skeptic's Guide to the Universe. So there's Skepticality, which was the very first skeptical podcast. If you're not listening to at least a few of the skeptical podcasts, you're missing out. Another step you can take to learn more is to get involved in local skeptical groups. Now, of course, on that, I'm pretty much preaching to the choir. But I suspect some of you are only coming to the pub. And to those of you who do, I encourage you to come to dinner meetings, to go to lectures and other events that are either organized by skeptical organizations or that are likely to be attended by many skeptics. If you sign up to the Sydney Skeptics Meetup Group, for example, you will get notices of lectures and other events that are likely to be attended by many skeptics or of interest to skeptics, and you will learn a lot from these events. You will become much more informed. Even when faced with issues that are not on which you are not well informed, there's still things you can do. You can make some progress by emphasizing the process rather than the actual subject matter. The conclusion people reach is not that important. What's important is that they apply a sound thought process, that they engage in critical thinking and skepticism. So by emphasizing the process, you can actually start talking about things that you don't know much about but sound fishy. So when a believer gets upset with you and declares that science doesn't know everything, which is of course true, and that his friend was healed from cancer using crystals, you can ask questions about what makes him think that that's actually indeed what happened and what evidence there is to prove that that's the case. And you can explain the processes that we follow in order to find out whether something is true or not. So you might not know anything about crystals, but you know enough about the scientific process to make a difference. And be humble. Remember and admit that you don't know everything. Though you should feel free to point out to your opponent or the other side that they don't know everything either. But that allows you, acknowledging that allows you to come to some sort of agreement. There are very few people with whom you can't come to agreement on anything. So find some common ground and start from there. For example, show your opponent or the other side that they're already a skeptic about something. I don't know, TV infomercials. Find something. Make them see the word skeptic in positive light about themselves, and then suddenly you've got something to talk about. An important point regarding being humble is that there is no need to act humble when you're presenting facts. So when falsehoods are being made about vaccines, for example, such as linking them to autism, it is quite okay to say you were wrong, because there was a large epidemiological study in California, Denmark and Sweden that showed conclusively that vaccines are not linked to autism. I've mentioned the principles, these three principles, in the context of spreading skepticism within your social circles or people around you, but there's more you can do. You can, using the same principles, of course, you can try to actively meet people who are unlikely to be skeptical and talk to them. Go to Mind, Body, Wallet, Mind, Body, Spirit, the conference in Sydney. Attend UFO conventions in public and psychic fairs and talk to people. Now remember, the vendors and merchants, the people who are getting paid there and are peddling their stuff, their psychic readings or whatever, they're fair game. But be extra polite with their victims. Subscribe to online groups and forums that host believers. Now, with regards to that, it's probably best if you know more about the subject matter than the people who would generally attend those places. So, for example, if you are going to attend a forum that's attended by anti-vaccination people, Peter will correct me, anti-vaccination liars, then you want to know about vaccines, and you want to know about how they promote the agenda against vaccines. You want to know about how things are done, so that you are well informed and you are able to discuss things with them at a better level and higher level than they're able to discuss things. The chances are, by the way, that you'll be kicked out of every one of those forums with time if you show your skeptical attitude.
In my case, I was actually thrown off the Australian Vaccination Network's mailing list before I had actually posted a message.
hopefully you'll be less famous than Peter and it take you more time to acquire enemies than Peter has been taking. So you definitely join those forums. Publish what you've learned. For example, if you have an interesting story or an interesting angle on a story, then write an article or a blog entry about it. If you've read a great book, for example, that you think will be of interest to other skeptics, write a book review. If you write something, send it to one of the magazines I've mentioned earlier, and if it's well written, it might be published. If you like to talk, as some of us definitely do, try to see if you can talk at a meeting or join or even perhaps start your own podcast. These are just a few things, and there's a lot more that everybody can do, but I think the principles of being polite, informed and humble always hold true. And now that I've mentioned the things that you can do to be very active, I want to mention something that to me is actually very important, and that is that you don't actually have to be active. Be active if you're passionate about it, if you get satisfaction from it, then that's great. But if all you want to do is go to the pub with other skeptics or join skeptical forums and discuss things with other skeptics at that level, then that's fine too. There's nothing in the definition of the word skeptic. I have looked it up. Nothing about evangelizing, nothing about telling other people about skepticism. Okay? The most important thing, the only really important thing about being a skeptic is being skeptical. So I'd like to end up with a quote which to me sums up what skepticism is all about, what's at its very core. It comes from physicist Richard Feynman, and I want to emphasize to all listeners of the Skeptic's Guide to the Universe podcast that I wrote this talk before Jay stole my thunder by making this his quote of the week, this week. Here it is. Anyway, I'll read it anyway because it's fantastic. I can live with doubt and uncertainty and not knowing. I think it's much more interesting to live not knowing than to have answers that might be wrong. I have approximate answers and possible beliefs and different degrees of certainty about different things, but I'm not absolutely sure of anything, and there are many things I don't know anything about, such as whether it means anything to ask, why are we here? But I don't have to know an answer. I don't feel frightened by not knowing things, by being lost in the mysterious universe without having any purpose, which is the way it really is as far as I can tell. It doesn't frighten me. So, if you can live with uncertainty and doubt, and you are aware of how little you actually know, and you strive to know more, then you are already a good skeptic. So congratulations. Thank you.
You're listening to The Skeptic Zone. I'm Brian Dunning from Skeptoid.com. When I'm not tuned into The Skeptic Zone, I'm recording the Skeptoid podcast, doing what I can to further knowledge by blasting away the widespread pseudosciences that infect popular culture. I've also compiled a 40-minute educational video on critical thinking called Here Be Dragons at herebedragonsmovie.com. I hope you check those out, and I hope you enjoy The Skeptic Zone.
Now it's time for Dr. Rachie Reports with Dr. Rachael Dunlop.
Hello everyone, and welcome to Dr. Rachie Reports. And at this time of the year, there is much talk about getting healthy, losing weight, and detoxing. But what exactly is detox, and is it really effective? Well, today on the show, I examine the world of detox and look at the science, or lack thereof, behind this multi-billion-dollar industry. So let's begin with what exactly is detox. Well, detox is defined by the Oxford English Dictionary as the removal of toxic substances or qualities. Now, in conventional medicine, detox has an established place where it refers to weaning addicts off drugs or alcohol, or eliminating poisons that have been ingested or injected. But as we've come to expect, in alternative medicine, the word detox has been hijacked to include a grab bag of pills, powders, supplements, kits, diets, magic waters and drinks, colonic irrigation, chelation therapy, and even shampoos and body brushes. Now, the alternative medicine people tell us we need to detox because of the large number of toxins from things like cigarette smoke, exhaust fumes, pesticides, caffeine, alcohol, and medicinal drugs. that our bodies are exposed to in today's world. They will also tell you that toxins accumulate in your body, and this overload explains all manner of illnesses including constipation, bloating, flatulence, poor digestion, heartburn, diarrhea, lack of energy, fatigue, etc., etc. In fact, listeners, pick an illness and most likely toxins have something to do with it. So claims on detox products include such things as stimulate your body's natural detoxifying functions, improve the functioning of your digestive system, works like an intestinal broom, flush away potentially harmful toxins from your system, and generally give your body a spring clean. Well, this is all very well, but does detox actually work? Well, as I mentioned earlier, conventional detox can be life-saving. However, in alternative medicine, and this probably won't surprise you listeners, detox is nothing but a scam. In fact, in 2005, Choice, which is Australia's consumer watchdog, conducted a study of 7 detox kits and concluded that detox supplements provide little or no known benefit over a healthy diet. A week or 2 on a detox program won't absolve you from a year of unhealthy eating, smoking, or drinking too much alcohol. We suggest you save your money. And for full details of this report, please visit my blog, and I have a link there to the Choice website. Now, more recently, in 2009, a report from the Voice of the Young Science Network, which was published by Sense About Science in the UK, reviewed 15 products from bottled detox water to face scrub and concluded that, at worst, some detox diets could have dangerous consequences and at best they are a waste of money. And in an interview this week with Dr. Ben Goldacre of the excellent Bad Science column and website on the Today program on Radio BBC4, when asked about detox and whether we should detox, he responded with an emphatic no. He went on to explain, it is a purification ritual, it's symbolic. The idea that you can fix things in just a month of healthy eating is dangerous because it means that people will imagine they are doing something quite useful for their lives when actually they're not. And here's what the wonderful book Trick or Treatment by Edzard Ernst and Simon Singh has to say about detox. The only substance that is being removed from a patient is usually money. So let's have a closer look at some of these detox products, and I've chosen 2 to ridicule for the fact that they are so ridiculous. Beginning with detox foot pads. Now, this nonsense has been debunked so many times, I'm surprised I even need to mention it. But the first ridiculous thing you'll notice about detox foot pads is that they are based on the concept that toxins can be sucked out of the soles of your feet. Now, let's just think about this, listeners. The human body is equipped with organs whose primary role is to get rid of waste products. You may have heard of them. They're known as the liver, the kidney, the colon, intestine, and the skin, not the feet. But this small detail doesn't seem to bother the woo-woo crowd. Let's not let the facts get in the way. So, foot pads are like nappies or diapers for your feet, and a little pouch reminiscent of a tea bag containing a mixture of dried ingredients is secured to the soles of your feet, usually overnight. And when you wake up in the morning and peel off the pads, they will appear brown and sticky. Now, manufacturers will tell you the brown sticky stuff are the toxins which seeped out of your feet whilst you slept. And if it sounds too good to be true that you can detox in your sleep, listeners, that's because it is. Now, the explanation for this brown sticky stuff is that these foot pads contain a substance known as wood sap or tree vinegar, as well as what's listed on the product as hydrolyzed carbohydrate or starch. Now, wood vinegar is a byproduct of wood combustion and it's highly hygroscopic, which means that it attracts and absorbs moisture very readily. And this makes it turn a brown colour. And the sticky feeling described by manufacturers is none other than the hydrolyzed carbohydrate, also known as sugar. And we all know that when sugar gets wet, it becomes sticky. Now, the detox dossier from the network of young scientists I mentioned earlier weren't satisfied with airy-fairy claims on websites from people who bought their degrees from diploma mills, so they went straight to the source and demanded answers about why these things go black and sticky. And here's what they were told by the customer liaison manager from Crystal Spring Detox Pads sold in the UK, and I quote, "Yes, the foot pads turning brown is due to the ingredients getting wet." So let's go on to our next preposterous form of detox, colonic irrigation. Now, these are also known as enemas, colonic irrigation, colon hydrotherapy, or colonics, and are marketed as a deep, whole system cleansing method designed to remove toxins from your intestine and cleanse our body's elimination system. Now, some of you may have heard of this treatment being administered with coffee, and coffee enemas have been made popular by celebrities, or sometimes they're used with various herbs. And this treatment is based on the popular misconception that toxins build up over time in our bodies, and this treatment is supposed to be effective against all manner of illnesses, once again. So treatment involves insertion of a narrow tube via the rectum and flushing of the bowel with considerable amounts of fluid. And here comes the fun part, listeners. The fluid is often flushed through a viewing tube so that you can monitor what comes out. How nice. Now, I'm sorry to tell you, but there is no scientific evidence that colonic irrigation has any benefit. And if these people claim that toxins and parasites build up in your colon over years, well, then we would all be dead. In fact, to the contrary, there have been reports of colonic irrigation actually causing harm by perforating the bowel or depleting the body of electrolytes. I, for one, can't understand why anyone would voluntarily place a tube up their bottom and want to examine the resulting deposits. It's a waste of money, a hazard to your health, and on top of everything else, unpleasant. So is detox safe? If none of these products do anything, then there's no harm in detox, right? Well, not necessarily. Many detox kits or detox diets involve several facets, such as pills, drinks, exfoliants, and may even include a booklet advising about exercise and fluid intake. And many of them recommend increasing the amount of water you consume under the false pretense that this will assist your liver with detox and flush your system. But this in itself can be dangerous. In July 2008, an English court awarded a woman £800,000 after she suffered permanent brain damage whilst on a detox diet. Dawn Page began vomiting uncontrollably after commencing the Amazing Hydration diet in 2001 and later suffered a seizure which damaged her memory, speech and concentration. And she was diagnosed with hypernatremia, which is a condition involving dangerously low salt concentrations induced by excessive water consumption. Now, hypernatremia, or water intoxication, occurs when a person drinks too much fluid, diluting salts and electrolytes in the blood, and this can essentially flood cells and tissues, cause organs such as the brain to swell up, and stop them working properly. Speaking about the dangers of too much detox to the BBC recently, Professor Graham McGregor of St George's University, London, said, "In normal circumstances, people should drink when their body tells them to, that is, when they get thirsty. Anything else is completely unnecessary and will just leave you standing in the queue for the toilet. Detox diets are a complete con in that respect." So, should we detox? Well, I hope you can work out by now that the short answer is no. The bottom line is that no scientific studies have shown that a detox regimen increases the elimination of toxins, and as the wonderful book Trick or Treatment reminds us, detox as an alternative medicine is based on ill-conceived ideas about human physiology, metabolism, and toxicology. There is no evidence that it does any good, and some treatments such as colonic irrigation can be harmful. So I'm sorry to tell you, listeners, but if you've overindulged this silly season, the best thing you can do is eat fresh fruit and veg, get some sleep, drink some water, and stay off the booze and fags. Just like most things in life, there is no quick fix for detox. And if you'd like further reading or the references for this Dr. Rachie reports, please head to skepticzone.tv and follow the links to the Skeptic Zone blog. And until next time, this has been Dr. Rachie Reports.
Well, it's a nice day here in Sydney, and Rachael Dunlop and I have come to Paddy's Market. Downtown Sydney, near the Central train station, a huge market selling mostly cheap Chinese imported bits and pieces and clothes and fruit and...
Yes, hello Richard. Handbags and hats and lots of jewellery.
Towels in front of us, shirts on this side.
Watches.
But we did come across a store upstairs which was a vitamin store, Rachel.
It was.
And what
Discount
were they
vitamin
Yes.
store. I thought I'd take the opportunity to have a look at some of their detox products. Since, as you heard earlier in the podcast, I talk about detox for Dr. Rachie this week. And I found a couple of products that, Richard, I just despair sometimes.
I saw them too. It said on it like 7-day detox, 15-day detox. But then there were some products that we didn't even know what the hell they were for an outrageous
Yes.
There
was this brilliant one called False Unicorn tablets.
As opposed to a real unicorn.
Yeah, and they were supposed to come from the ancient Indians or something that used to take them to assist menstruation or relieve menstrual pain.
For $47.
$47, that's right.
Little cylinder of them.
Yeah, but there was another thing of note that got me a little bit angry was a detox product that on the back it said that the herbs contained in this product have been scientifically tested and demonstrated through thousands of years of use.
Tradition.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, they're allowed to say that. They're allowed to say it's been demonstrated traditionally or it's been used traditionally, but they said scientifically tested. And I assume what they were referring to was one of the main ingredient, which is milk thistle, or what's it called? Silybum. It's actually the botanic name is Silybum marianum, which I think is a great name for a thistle. It's basically the Scotch thistle that in Australia you see growing along the side of the road, the purple one.
Yeah.
It's the flower of Scotland. Anyway, they said that it had been scientifically tested, and I happen to have just recently read a Cochrane review of the efficacy of this milk thistle, and it turns out it has no efficacy.
Well, I wonder if when they say it's been scientifically tested, does that mean it's been tested but they don't bother reporting the results which said it was rubbish or
well, I don't care, Richard. That's a lie, in my opinion.
Yeah.
It's a lie. It's misleading.
Yeah.
And the thing that really makes me angry is that there's a number on the packet, Australian L number, which means it's listed with the Therapeutic Goods Administration. So the government has actually given it an official-looking number, and it's approved, and so it can go and be sold in pharmacies.
For an outrageous sum.
But it's a lie. That's what gives me the...
You know, you were saying before you think we're in the wrong business.
I do think we're in the wrong business. If you can sell a pill called False Unicorn for $47, surely you're just joking.
Maybe we should sell the real unicorn and see how we go.
Yeah. I'm ready to turn to the dark side just about, I swear.
Listeners, please help Rachel. She's about to turn to the dark side. Send her encouraging emails.
That's it. I'm off to the vitamin shop.
Hi, I'm Dr. Stefan Sojka0 from the Astrological Cellular Crystal Research Institute. Did you know that a full 1/3 of your body weight is made up of toxins? It sounds unbelievable, but throughout a normal day, you absorb toxic atoms, toxic compounds, and toxic vibrations from a multitude of toxic sources. Toxic food, toxic air, toxic water, and toxic prophylactics. Over time, this toxicity builds up to the point that every cell in your body becomes overweight, tired, and sluggish. What you need is a full cleansing. Introducing Astrological Cellular Crystal Research Institute's breakthrough toxicity treatment, 123 Gut Flush. 123 Gut Flush is a 3-step scientific total toxic cleansing system designed to rid your entire being of poison and flush away 1/3 of your body weight in one easy treatment. Step 1 involves swallowing our patented Rachie-infused crystal. This crystal prepares every cell in your body for the cleansing process by aligning them all with the same directional and vibrational resonance. Step 2 is to drink our unique patented natural healing drainer. This unblocks the nanopipes within your cell's microplumbing, then prepares and aligns each toxin in an orderly queue at the revolving chemical doorway of each cell ready for expulsion. During this process, you will feel a deep sense of universal connectedness, since crystal vibrations are still present, attuning your astral self to your quantum self and opening up all your chakras to receive the final stage of the 123 Gut Flush cleansing process. Stage 3 is the final toxic cleansing phase. We have created a miracle herbal farm remedy that releases cellular sheepdogs into your acupuncture meridians to round up the toxins and herd them through the astral plane sheep dip that resides in your base chakra. Once treated, the now completely harmless toxins are herded en masse from the lower chakra post-cleansing holding yard and straight out of your back passage. Depending on your level of prior toxicity, we usually recommend using an industrial strength chamber and cistern to process the toxic deluge. There has never been an easier and more scientific way to lose 1/3 of your body weight and cleanse your liver, spleen, gallbladder and hypothalamus in one 5-minute session than 1-2-3 Gut Flush. Please note 1-2-3 Gut Flush is an extremely thorough cleansing. For complete safety, please consult your chiropractor, iridologist and family ear candler before use.
Hello, my name is Michael Wolloghan0 and welcome to The Roundup, where I share news and views that will interest skeptics, humanists, secularists and followers of the flying spaghetti monster. It's great to be back after a short hiatus. I hope you ate a lot of ham, turkey and pork and indulged in some beer, wine and spirits over the holiday season. As you probably know, a very important and iconic individual was born on the 25th of December, and it's important to pay annual homage to him.
Here's looking at you, kid.
Yes, I am speaking of none other than Humphrey Bogart. Let's start off by doing a quick review of 2008. Firstly, the year started off with this ominous and now infamous YouTube video.
Hello, leaders of Scientology. We are anonymous. Over the years, we have been watching you. Your campaigns of misinformation, your suppression of dissent, your litigious nature, all of these things have caught our eye. With the leakage of your latest propaganda video into mainstream circulation, the extent of your malign influence over those who have come to trust you as leaders has been made clear to us. Anonymous has therefore decided that your organization should be destroyed for the good of your...
Another video called Call to Action appeared on YouTube on January 28, 2008, asking for individuals to protest globally outside Church of Scientology centers on February 10, 2008. The internet-based group known as Anonymous quickly gained massive media attention for protesting against the illegal actions, fraudulent activities, and human rights violations perpetuated by the Church of Scientology. In 2008, the controversial independent documentary film Expelled No Intelligence Allowed was released. The film promoted intelligent design and alleged that scientific theory leads to fascism, the Nazi Holocaust, communism, abortion, and evil eugenics. I won't spend time refuting the claims of this ludicrous propaganda film, but suggest people go to expelledexposed.com, run by the National Centre for Science Education, for more information. In July, Sydney was subjected to World Youth Day, a Catholic youth festival. The Sydney Atheists, with various other secular groups, peacefully protested against the Church's stances on homosexual marriage, contraception, and abortion with a great deal of success. In August, the bald and charming bad astronomer Phil Plait became the president of the James Randi Educational Foundation. The catchphrase, "Yes, we can," became well known to all in November when Barack Obama became president-elect of the United States of America. You might recall in my last segment that I mentioned the trial of cult leader Wayne Bent in the USA. He was sentenced to 18 years in prison for molesting one of his young female followers. Unfortunately, 8 years of Bent's sentence was suspended, making the effective sentence 10 years unless the suspension is revoked. The self-proclaimed Messiah melodramatically said in an online post that the courts have again crucified the Son of God. I think the judge summed up the case nicely.
This case really was not about religion. It never has been about religion. The case has to deal with, did you, Wayne Bent, commit a crime?
My next story comes from Anaheim, California. Disgraceful little slimeball Raul Hernandez, who was the pastor of the Faith in Action Church, was sentenced by a judge to 90 years in prison after he admitted molesting 4 girls and 1 boy over a 10-year span beginning in 1996. Prosecutors said they have a videotape showing Hernandez having sex in his church's office with one of his victims. At one point in the video, Hernandez answers a telephone by saying "God bless you" in Spanish. The video closes with a shot of him at the pulpit, delivering a sermon on blasphemy. He pleaded guilty to multiple counts of lewd acts upon children, other sexual acts, and distributing pornography to a minor. He also admitted to failing to appear in court after he was released on bail when he was first arrested in February 2006. Prosecutors said at the time they believed Hernandez was trying to collect money so he could flee to Mexico and avoid prosecution. After the sentencing, the judge said, quote, "It was the epitome of hypocrisy for him to be crying and clutching his Bible in court today. He wasn't crying and clutching his Bible when he was violating his position of trust as a pastor and molesting his victims," end quote. This man of the cloth violated his followers' trust. One wonders if he is going to get violated in prison.
Join us now for Drinking Skeptically in the Think Tank.
And welcome again to the Think Tank, and I'd like to welcome right off the top our special guest for this Think Tank. Yes, you've missed him in the last episode, but here he is, Dave the Happy Singer.
Hello.
Hello, Dave.
And Tiffany Day. Hello, Tiffany.
Hello, Richard.
You're looking very tan today. Did you go to the beach, maybe?
Was at Coogee Beach today.
Oh, very nice. And Dr. Rachael Dunlop.
Hello, Richard. Hello, everyone. We were at Coogee Beach as well this morning, Tiff.
No, I missed you by about 5 hours.
That's right.
Just missed us. Just missed us.
And if you're interested to know what Coogee Beach sounds like, listeners, you can go to skepticzone.tv, and down the left you can download a little MP3 of the sounds of Coogee Beach, Australia.
Now, that's a bit mean, isn't it, Richard? A lot of our friends in the Northern Hemisphere are freezing at the moment.
So
fair enough. If you're freezing and you feel like you're missing summer, go to skepticzone.tv and listen to the sounds of the Australian ocean.
And then write in abusive emails.
Yes, to Richard at skepticzone.tv.
They're all sledging and skiing and having a wonderful time, having snowball fights.
I'm so jealous.
Actually, they're not.
They're
not. They're all complaining on Twitter that it's minus 20 and it's too cold to get out of bed.
Oh, it's fabulous weather.
He's from England. Listeners, don't listen to him.
Now, what a week it's been, or a couple of weeks it's been in skeptical news. I think we should kick off straight away with the atheist bus, Rachel.
Yes, everyone probably knows about this campaign. It was the brainchild of Eran Segev0, who is an English comedian. And as you probably know, there are 800 buses in England, Scotland and Wales which have been plastered with ads saying there's probably no God, just enjoy life.
So stop worrying and enjoy your life.
So stop worrying and enjoy your life, yeah. And it's actually been very, very successful. And
it's quite a pleasant message, really.
It is. It's not confronting. It's
positive.
Accusation.
It's happy.
Yeah, it is. But of course, there had to be some naysayers who've complained about it, haven't they?
Of course they have.
Now, can anyone guess who might have complained about the campaign?
The Krishnas, the Hare Krishnas, maybe?
No, Richard.
Was it the Jews?
The
Jews?
No.
Buddhists, they'd have a problem with
the Pastafarians.
Yeah, they're really cranky, the Buddhists, aren't they?
It must have been the Muslims. You don't want to offend the Muslims now.
No,
it wasn't
you
the Muslims,
don't. But it wasn't them, actually, Dave. No.
Rachel, we can't wait any longer.
Hindus. It was the Hindus. There's loads of Hindus in England.
Close.
Who was it?
But no, it was Christian Voice
in the
UK have complained about the...
Christian Voice?
Christians don't complain.
Well, this must be an anomaly then, because this particular Christian Voice organisation, in fact, the National Director, Stephen Green, has spoken out and said that this defies the laws of the Advertising Standards Authority, and he's saying that they break the rules on substantiation and truthfulness.
Yeah.
Now, the reason he says this is because the Advertising Standards Authority Code states that marketers must hold documentary evidence to prove all claims. And National Director Stephen Green has said, and I quote, "There is plenty of evidence for God, from people's personal experience to the complexity, interdependent beauty and design of the natural world."
I'm sold.
I have nothing to say to that.
What do you mean, Tiffany?
I do.
Dave, let us hear your wisdom.
Speak for the rest of us.
Well, I'd just like to point him to the chapter in Richard Dawkins' God Delusion entitled "Why There Almost Certainly Is No God." He could do with reading a book. It's interesting. There's a parallel with Carlsberg Lager. that had a long-run slogan on their ads in the UK called "Probably the best lager in the world," and it was kind of almost a jibe at this rule that they've got to substantiate it. They couldn't say it's the best lager in the world, but probably the best lager in the world.
That.
And it's a long-running slogan, probably the best lager in the world.
Is that why they said probably? No, God.
Well,
oh yeah.
Yeah, they were advised that would be the better wording.
But it's also what you would expect them to say, because that's the best statement you can make.
Yeah, well, it is anyway.
You could argue almost certainly might be even better, but
yeah, I think
pretty
Richard
much
Dawkins...
You don't want to go around attempting to prove a negative.
Richard Dawkins said publicly that he would have preferred it to say there almost certainly isn't a God. But the word probably, I think, was...
I like the ring of it. I really like the slogan.
Yeah.
So Richard Dawkins has endorsed this campaign, hasn't he, Tiff?
He sure did. He contributed, I think, about £5,000 or something.
Oh, wow.
Actually, it was all done with donations, wasn't it, the other time?
Yeah.
There was a little bit of backstory. When Ariane Shireen first mentioned it in her blog, they said, right, let's collect some money, and it kind of fizzled out. They got a few hundred, but they didn't do it. And somebody turned around and said, well, all the money Richard Dawkins made off the God delusion, why didn't he just chip in a little bit? We could have done this. They only needed a few grand. And Richard turned around and the comments well linked on the internet. He turned around on the forum and he said, guys, if I'd known about this, I would have done.
Right.
And that reinvigorated it. A couple of months after it, he said he'd match every donation up to the amount they needed.
Yeah, which was 11,000 they needed.
And that, getting Richard on board, then just... Of course, sent it global, and I think it was getting on for 140 grand or something. They made in the end. It was. This is UK, so in Australian or American terms, or.
But we're not talking large amounts of money, are we? We're really not.
No, it was just everybody who's delighted to see something like this happening, chipping in a couple of quid.
And it made the news here in Australia, of course, and in fact, listeners. The young comedian, sorry, her name was?
Ariane Shireen.
Thank you. I apologise, Ariane, for forgetting your name. I know she listens to the show.
Yes, of course.
Of course.
She's lovely.
She's lovely. She was on one of our weekend morning television shows with an interview, which was very sympathetic.
And very positive, which was really interesting.
And I've put that clip on YouTube. If listeners would care to go to YouTube and just type in Richard Saunders or RIEDSA, which is my YouTube name, you'll find that clip, and it's really great. It's a nice interview with her, and they give her lots to say, and they're very sympathetic.
And they actually say that we're sympathetic to your cause, which I was really surprised to hear from a morning TV show. Normally they're quite anti that sort of thing. But how can you not love her?
She's lovely.
She's gorgeous, and she's got this mellifluous voice, and she's just...
Mellifluous?
Mellifluous. I love that word. I love that word.
Mellifluous.
That's a lovely
It means
word.
golden honey tones,
Just like you.
That's right.
Yeah.
Just like this. But there is a local arm to this story as well, in fact. Recently in Tasmania in Australia, the Atheist Foundation of Australia also tried to launch a similar campaign on buses, and their campaign was going to have slogans that said such things as sleep in on Sunday mornings, which I think is really good, and celebrate reason. And they wanted to get this onto public transport here. It was going to cost them $16,000, which isn't that much, like you were saying.
Not really, no.
But their application was rejected based on, no reason that was given, in fact.
No reason was given.
No reason was given. The Australia's biggest outdoor advertising company, APN Outdoor, managed the bus advertising in Tasmania. And it took them 3 weeks to come to a decision, and they just said no. They won't explain why.
Well, I know that in Sydney, with advertising on transport, like trains and buses and taxis, you're not allowed to put any kind of advertising that is political in nature or religious in nature. So that...
Unless you're Hillsong Church or World Youth Day.
That's what APN have stated. I'm not sure what it's like down in Tasmania, though.
Is that like everybody is equal, but some people are more equal than others?
I think so. Yeah. The rumour I heard, because Sydney atheists who are not affiliated to the Atheist Foundation of Australia also have a campaign in the works under the slogan "No God, No Worries," and as far as I know, they face a similar problem. I've also heard a rumour that APN's answer was that we won't do anything that might be controversial.
Well, it's interesting actually, because It's reported here that there were ads on Adelaide buses that were adorned with religious messages such as John 3:16. So
yes.
For some reason, religious advertisements are allowed to go ahead, but atheist advertisements aren't.
Well, Hillsong is all around Sydney, everywhere.
Yeah,
Hillsong is our local Pentecostal evangelical. We call them the Happy Clappers, but
we do.
We do. A lot of our listeners listening to us right now in their little earphones in the United States are well aware of road signs all over the states would spark out religious messages, pray to Jesus and hallelujah and whatever the case may be. So it's interesting when there's a counter measure taken. It's so difficult. This ties in a little bit, and here's a tenuous segue, I must admit.
Not another one.
Oh, yes.
Every week.
A couple of weeks ago, and this is something we didn't mention on the Think Tank 2 weeks ago, was there's a movement by one of our politicians in the state of New South Wales, who is the head of a religious organisation, to ban topless bathing.
Oh, yeah.
Now, topless bathing on Sydney beaches and New South Wales beaches has been just part of life for 20, 30 years now.
It's just accepted.
And no one gives a stuff anymore, or a hoot, or a hooters, one might say.
A bad pun thrown in as well.
Sorry. And so he's coming along, and I thought it was hilarious because he was saying things along the lines of it offends people, and he was worried about, for example, Muslim people might get offended. I'm thinking, hang on, Fred. His name's Fred. Hang on, Fred. These are the same people who you know for sure, when they die, are going to be tortured for eternity, and you're worried about if they see a naked breast?
But you didn't mention, Richard, that this man is a little bit unhinged.
He does.
He's trying to ban topless bathing in Australia. I think that's bloody obvious.
He also regularly turns up to the Sydney Gay and Lesbian Mardi Gras and lines himself at the beginning of the parade and prays for rain with his followers.
And he believes that people can be possessed by little demons.
Well, I've got a bit of sympathy for him, because it's totally unnatural for mammals to be seen without clothing.
It's in previous episodes, I've put out a little plea for listeners to send in a couple of dollars here, a couple of dollars there, to keep the show ticking over, which is greatly appreciated. But what you may not realise is, because of the generosity of our listeners sending in their donations, some $2, some $20, some $50 even, I've been able to buy Tiffany Day a recording kit.
Oh my gosh.
Here you are, Tiffany.
Thank you so much.
Here we are. That comprises of a little...
Oh my gosh, thank you so much.
Digital recorder and a microphone and a set of headphones there. Little instruction book, so you'll be able to record high-quality shows for our listeners.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
How cool are Skeptic Zone listeners?
Yeah,
how cool and sexy,
thank you.
And gorgeous and generous and wonderful.
And
mellifluous.
So listeners, if you do feel so inclined to donate a little bit of money towards our show, it does actually go into buying us real stuff that we can use to produce a better show for you to listen to. So we're very grateful, and if you enjoy the show, please don't hesitate to throw a few dollars our way. Thank you very much.
Thank you, so much, Zone listeners.
You know what this means, though, Richard, don't you? This means that there's going to be yet another drunken girl following me around at parties with a microphone.
Are you referring to me? Dave the Happy Singer?
Because what happened before...
Hang on a second, let me just...
All right.
Let me just clear this up.
Yes.
I think it's the other way around. You're the one that follows me around.
Yes. There's a microphone in the vicinity.
Yes.
I've been going to all the cool skeptic parties.
I gave Rachel a little recording kit a number of weeks ago, of course.
Yes.
And she's been using that tremendously well to follow...
talk to Dave the Happy Singer.
At parties when drunk saying, "So, Dave the Happy Singer, what are you doing?"
I'm sure our listeners will remember the New Year's Eve countdown you did. That was fantastic.
That was wonderful, wasn't it?
Proof that British people can count backwards from 10.
Well done, Dave.
Yes.
I was
Thank
quite
you.
impressed with that.
Thank you.
Now, I've got a story I wanted to talk about. It involves our friend, Dr. Ben Goldacre, from the wonderful Bad Science column.
Our friend?
Oh, he doesn't know yet, does he?
Our friend?
All right, Richard has an announcement to make, listeners.
Our friend Dr. Ben Goldacre is my whatever X number to the power of 10 cousin.
Whoa.
Let me just put this in perspective. I'll explain what happened. I was doing some research on Ben on the weekend, and I came across a podcast
that mentioned that he is related to an Australian and that his history or ancestry goes back to Sir Henry Parkes, who was one of the fathers of Federation in Australia. And I happened to mention this to Richard, and he said, "Oh, that's funny, because
that's funny.
You're
I'm a Park.
also related to Sir Henry Parkes."
Yes.
So you sent Ben an email about this, didn't you?
I did.
And he hasn't got back to you yet, has he?
He's probably so stunned.
He's probably going,
Oh
no. Anyway, we respect Ben's work highly, and we know he listens to The Zone.
However, you were saying?
Ben gave us a big win this week, and many of you would have heard about this. It was concerning an interview he had on BBC Radio 4 just after New Year's, discussing detox. And this was in response to the detox dossier that I mentioned in Dr. Rachie earlier in today's Zone, which was a study done by the Network of Young Scientists and sponsored by Sense About Science in the UK. And these young scientists decided to scientifically analyse 15 detox products to see if there was really anything to them. And if you listened to Dr. Rachie earlier, you would know now, by now, listeners, that there is nothing to detox. It is, as some people say, a scam.
It's a scam.
Some people say.
It's a scam.
It's a scam.
Which means supplementary, complementary and alternative medicine.
Yes, it's an acronym.
It's an acronym. In any case, Ben was being interviewed with the managing director of a detox company called Detox in a Box, and he mentioned something he'd seen on her website and asked her about this particular line on her website, and she denied that it existed. She said it wasn't her website. It turned out that it actually was on her website, and so the company had to issue an apology, and BBC Radio 4 also made an announcement saying that Ben was right. Things have actually progressed since then. Ben did some further research about this company, Detox in a Box. He went to their website and he looked at some of their other claims, and he found out that some of the things that they say, some of their exciting claims include things like pumpkin seeds are a natural depression cure, lemon helps maintain healthy teeth and bones, and I know that's your favourite, Dave.
Well, it is, yeah, because, lemons are famously acidic, and acid famously destroys tooth enamel, and that's one of the last things I want to put on my teeth.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because Ben did ask the managing director if she had any evidence to back up this claim that lemons are good. She said that they didn't have any scientific evidence. Surprise, surprise. And then she remembered that there was a study involving 7 people, which he found on a random web page that says lemons build bones and teeth and nourish the brain and nerve cells. But this was just some kind of tenuous nutritionist claim. It hasn't been published in a peer-reviewed journal. There's no, we don't know if it's actually true. But to make things even...
we can guess.
To make things even worse for Detox in a Box, Ben found some information on their website which sounded pretty sciencey and sounded like it could actually be correct. And so he says here, and I quote from his blog, badscience.net, and I urge listeners to visit this blog, it's fantastic. He says, it was quite sciencey, quite plausible, and quite interesting. It sounded like a write-up of a proper research paper, so he wondered if it was really written by Detox in a Box. Well, he did some further research, and guess what he found, people?
What?
Let me guess.
No, it wasn't. It was actually copied verbatim. Hundreds of words of it were copied from a blog post from a proper pharmacist named Jennifer Gibson, and it was passed off as belonging to Detox in a Box, except they just removed her name, and they copied the rest of it and said that it was theirs. Yes. Oh. So the other thing is that the line that started all the fuss that he brought up when he was on the interview on Radio BBC 4 was one of the claims on Detox in a Box's website was one of the most complex detoxification functions is against heavy metals such as lead, mercury, cadmium. Cadmium. I can't. It's incorrectly spelled.
Cadmium.
Cadmium. That's it.
That's what you Australian guys call red peppers, isn't it? No, that's capsicum. Capsicum.
It's like capsicum, but it's a toxic metal. Yeah. Anyway, the spelling mistake was included, and he found that the reason the spelling mistake was included was because it was copied verbatim from another website called detoxguide.com, so they copied that as well. That wasn't theirs. But now you'll find that the managing director is quite upset about what's been happening as a result of this, because she was caught out red-handed. She was caught out. And one of Ben's readers of the Bad Science blog actually wrote to the managing director to ask her about this. And she replied to him, and I quote, this is what she wrote back: "I am astounded that scientists and physicians have started such a campaign. I apologise for a genuine mistake, although you will probably not believe me. Should I wish you well in your endeavour to damage a business which I have put my heart and soul into for the past 4 years?" And here's the punchline.
Yes.
"You have no idea how this is affecting me on both a personal and business level."
Oh, boo-hoo.
Yeah, right.
Poor lass.
Boo-hoo indeed. So it's actually funny if during the last week, if you kept an eye on the Detox in a Box website, it was changing every day. You know, things would appear and then disappear, and disclaimers would come up and then go again. And so they've since taken off the line about cadmium because they've got no evidence for that. I'm not sure about the lemons protecting.
I'm sure the first time I saw this website linked, I think it was from Ben's blog, but there was a disclaimer on there saying, "Oh, that stuff that we said on the radio that wasn't on our website was on our website. Sorry about that. Bye."
Yes, they did say that, in fact. The disclaimer said, "Following Nasamir Ahmadi's appearance with Dr. Ben Goldacre on this morning's Today program, the company would like to make the following statement. We acknowledge that Dr. Ben Goldacre was correct at the time of the interview that the Detox in a Box website did contain the words, 'one of the most complex detoxification functions, blah, blah, blah.' The website has now been amended to avoid any further confusion or lies."
Yeah. Can I translate that into Australian?
Yes. Yeah.
"Welcome to Detox in a Box. We are full of crap."
No, that's what happens afterwards.
Well, the thing is, all they actually do is sell meals that are packaged for you, and they claim that they're, organic and natural, and so they're better for you. But they charge you an arm and a leg for it, and it's the same stuff you can go down to the fruit shop or the local market and buy for yourself. But if they just said that, if they said we're selling you nice fresh food that you probably don't have time to purchase yourself, then that's fine. But if you're going to make all this stuff up and you don't have evidence to back it up, then you are going to get caught out. And I was so thrilled to hear Ben just to do that. And when she turned around and said, "Oh," and she laughed and she scoffed about it. She said, "Oh, I don't think so. That's not on our website. I think you're getting it mixed up with another one. Ha ha ha." And he said, "Well, I'm pretty sure I'm not, but I will double check and get back to you." And the journalist said, "Well, I don't have it in front of me, so I can't tell at this point." But yeah, that was a big win for us.
That was a big win for us.
Absolutely.
Well done, Ben.
Well done, Ben, indeed. You see, that skeptical gene, I think. I can feel it strongly, folks. I can feel it strongly in my family. Yes, all right.
And Ben, if you're listening, contact your cousin.
Well, thank you, Dr. Rachael Dunlop, and thank you for your Dr. Rachie reports earlier in the show. That was great.
Did you learn something?
I did. I'm not going to wear those detox things on my feet anymore.
Oh, do you mean they weren't sucking toxins out of your feet?
Well, I thought they were, but I just woke up with soggy socks.
Just go and get a colon irrigation. That's fine.
Yes, and I'd like to thank Tiffany Day.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you for coming along. Anytime. And of course, Dave, our special guest, Dave the Happy Singer.
DaveTheHappySinger.com.
You had to get that in.
Peace and reason, guys. Stay happy. Thanks for having me.
And until next time, it's goodbye from the Think Tank. Cheers,
Bye, everyone.
Cheers.
Richard, another gloriously cleansing experience that Zone was this week.
I feel quite clean now. It's either my body or my wallet's been cleansed. I'm not sure.
No, I feel completely flushed. Yeah. Another great show. And I'd like to thank all the listeners as well. We're growing in number, and it's great to see we're sort of popping up and down the charts there on the iTunes podcast charts.
Yeah.
And it's good to see there's so much interest in skepticism.
There is worldwide, because we're getting emails from all over the world, and thank you for writing into us. We do love reading your emails.
Yeah, and we love that we're coming from down under and doing our thing down here. I checked the charts the other day, in the science charts. There's about 4 or 5 sort of skeptical podcasts in there.
Very popular.
Yeah.
And I know there are some more coming up soon. Well, the Young Australian Skeptics have a podcast.
Yes, that's quite good.
The Sydney
too.
Atheists have their own podcast.
Yeah.
There's another new one starting up, I hear, soon.
Goodness me.
Well, the market's going to be flooded.
Oh, it's terrible. There's going to be too much competition. Now, we're going to have to amalgamate. I think we'll get a super podcast.
Yeah, we can call it the Skeptic Zone.
Excellent
That's what
idea.
we'll do, yes.
Good stuff. Well, we will carry on next week, and thanks for listening again. Thanks, Richard, for another great show.
Okay, and you'll hear us all next week, everybody.
And it will be just as cleansing an experience as it was this week.
Yes. All our listeners, between now and the next show, go and get cleansed.
Yeah, detox.
Goodbye, Steph.
Goodbye.
You've been listening to The Skeptic Zone. Visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for comments, contacts, and extra video reports.
The Skeptic Zone, a miracle of